9-1 solving equations by taking square roots practice solutions. Alright, so for number 1 in our homework or our practice, we have to find the square root of plus or minus the square root of 0.0081. So that 81 is actually going to be our numerator, and then that 1 is in the what place value. We have tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths. So the 81 is going to go over 10,000. And we're going to take the square root of both of these numbers, keeping that plus or minus in front of it. The square root of 81 is 9, and the square root of 10,000 is 100. So that's 9 over 100, which is the same exact thing as plus or minus 0.09. For number 2, we have plus or minus the square root of 8 over 25. So the 8 is going to be taking the square root of it, and same thing with the 25. Keep the plus or minus in front of it. The 8 is 4 and 2. The 4 is 2 and 2. So we pair up those 2's. This is going to be plus or minus 2 square root 2 over the square root of 25 is 5. For 3, we have plus or minus the square root of 96. 96 is divisible by 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. So we have 1 left over. 16. 4 goes into 16 4 times. And then 24 is 4 and 6. The 6 is 2 and 3. We have 2 4s, so those will pair up. We make sure that we keep that plus or minus in front. The 2 and the 3 do not pair up, so those stay underneath the radical. So this is going to give us plus or minus 4 square root 6. For 4, we are solving 5x squared minus 21 is equal to 39. So for this, we're first going to get that x squared by itself. So we're going to undo any addition or subtraction that we have. So that 21 we're going to move over by adding it to both sides. So we have 5x squared is equal to 39 plus 21. Then 9 plus 1 is 10. Carry the 1. 3 plus 2 is 5 plus 1 is 6. So that's 5x squared is equal to 60. We divide each side by the 5 and get x squared is equal to 12. From here, we're going to take the square root of both sides. Since we're solving an equation, we're taking the square root of both sides. We have to make sure we put that plus or minus in front of our answer. So if you need to, put it down, circle it. That 12 is 4 and 3. The 4 is 2 and 2. So those two 2's pair up. So we're going to have x is equal to plus or minus 2 square root 3. For 5, we have 0.1x squared minus 1.2 is equal to 8.8. So I'm going to start by adding the 1.2 to both sides. We have 0.1x squared is equal to the 2 plus 8 is 10. Carry the 1. 8 plus 1 is also 10. So from here, we're going to divide each side by 0.1. to get x squared is equal to. If we move that decimal point over 1 on the bottom to get 1, we have to do the same to the top. So we're going to have 100 over 1, which is giving us x squared is equal to 100. We take the square root of both sides, and we get x is equal to plus or minus 10. For 6, we have 6x squared minus 21 is equal to 33. So we're going to start by moving that 21 over. Add it to both sides. So we have 6x squared is equal to 4. 3 and 1 is 4. 3 and 2 is 5. So from here, we divide each side by 6. X squared is equal to 9. Then we we take the square root of both sides. So x is equal to plus or minus 3. For 7, we have 6 minus 1/3 x squared is equal to negative 20. So we're going to first start by subtracting that 6 from each side. So we have negative 1/3 x squared is equal to negative 26. To get the 1/3 over, we're going to multiply each side by the reciprocal, which is just negative 3. a negative times a negative is a positive, so x squared is equal to a positive. 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So x squared is equal to 78. From here, we take the square root of both sides. That's 78. We know 2 goes into it because it's an even number. 2 goes into 7 3 times with 1 left over. 2 goes into 18 9 times. The 39 is 3 and 13. So these are our this is our prime factorization of 78. Because those 2 doesn't match up with another 2 and the 3 doesn't match up with another 3, nor does the 13 match up with another 13, x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 78. For 8, we have 5 minus 2x squared is equal to negative 3. So we're going to subtract each side with that 5. So we have negative 2x squared is equal to negative 8. We divide each side by negative 2. A negative 8 divided by negative 2 is a positive 4, so x squared is equal to 4. We take the square root of both sides and get that x is equal to plus or minus 2. For 9, we have 7x squared plus 10 is equal to 18. We're going to subtract that 10 from both sides. So we have 7x squared is equal to 8. From here, we divide each side by 7. We get x squared is equal to 8 over 7. We take the square root of both sides. That 8 is 4 and 2. The 4 is 2 and 2. The 7 is just 7 and 1. So the two 2's pair up. This is going to give us x is equal to plus or minus 2 square root 2 all over the square root of 7. Now, you have to rationalize this. So you have to multiply the top and the bottom by that square root 7 to give yourselves x is equal to plus or minus 2 square root 14 all over 7. For 10, we have 5 times x minus 9 squared is equal to 15. We're going to start here by dividing each side by 5. We get x minus 9 squared is equal to 3. From here, we take the square root of both sides, so x minus 9 is equal to plus or minus square root 3. Now get x by itself, add the 9 to both sides, so x is equal to 9 plus or minus the square root of 3. For 11, we have x plus 15 squared is equal to 81. So we don't have to bring anything over. Our binomial squared is already by itself. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. We're going to be left with x plus 15 is equal to plus or minus 9. So because this square root simplified to be a whole number, we are going to turn this into x plus 15 is equal to negative 9, and x plus 15 is equal to positive 9. We are going to subtract 15 from each side. So x is equal to negative 24. Subtract 15 from this side. We get x is equal to negative 6. For 12, we have 3 times x plus 1 squared is equal to 27. So we're going to divide each side by 3. We get x plus 1 squared is equal to 9. We take the square root of both sides, so x plus 1 is equal to plus or minus 3. Once again, our right side of our equal sign is a whole number, positive and negative 3. So we are going to turn this into x plus 1 is equal to negative 3, as well as x plus 1 is equal to positive 3. And then we solve for both. Subtract the 1 on both sides. You get x is equal to negative 4, and x is equal to 2. For our next question, number 13, we have 2 over 3. In your actual practice, it's 2 underscore 3. It's supposed to be 2 over 3. So it's a fraction. 2/3 times x minus 40 squared is equal to 24. So we're going to first get rid of that 2/3. So we're going to multiply each side by 3 over 2. These are going to cancel, leave us with x minus 40 squared is equal to, the 24 and the 2 can cross simplify. The 2 will become a 1, the 24 becomes a 12. So we're doing 12 times 3, which is 36. From here, we take the square root of both sides. We're going to have x minus 40 is equal to plus or minus 6. So again, turn this into two equations. X minus 40 is equal to negative 6, and x minus 40 is equal to positive 6. Add the 40 to both sides. We're going to have x is equal to positive 34. Oops. And then if we add 40 to this one, we get that x is equal to 46. So 34 and 46 are our solutions for this one. For 14, we have x minus 12 squared is equal to 54. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. We're going to have x minus 12 is equal to plus or minus, the 54 is 6 and 9, the 9 is 3 and 3, the 6 is 2 and 3. So those 3's would pair up, and the 6 would stay underneath. So from here, we're going to add the 12 to both sides and get x is equal to 12 plus or minus 3 square root 6. For 15, we have x plus 5.4 squared is equal to 1.75. So for this one, we're going to just start by taking the square root of both sides. We're going to be left with x plus 5.4 is equal to the square root of 1.75. 1.75 is 175 over 100. So if we take the square root of both of these, that 175 is 5 and 35. The 35 is 5 and 7. So it's 5 square root 7 over 10. That plus or minus goes in front of this. The 5 can become a 1. The 10 becomes a 2. So we can rewrite this as x plus 5.4 is equal to plus or minus square root 7 over 2. We can now subtract the 5.4 from each side. And this is going to leave us with x is equal to negative 5.4 plus or minus the square root of 7 over 2. Now, if you want to rewrite this to where all of your numbers are fractions, you can. You don't have to. You could have left the square root of 1.75 as well. I think in your solutions I left it. So you could also give me x is equal to negative 5.4 plus or minus the square root of 1.75. So both of these are solutions. It's just depending on what form you want to give it to me as. All right, so for our next example, number 16, it tells us the area on a wall covered by a rectangular poster is 320 square inches. So the area of that rectangle is 320 square inches. The length of the poster is 1.25 times longer than the width. From there, it tells us what is the diameter, what are the dimensions of the poster. All right, so we are going to start with finding, so our area is our length times our width, and it tells us that our length is 1.25 times our width. So the total area is 320 square inches, I think it was, square inches. And then your length and your width times themselves are going to equal to 320. So what we want to do is we want to take this 320 is equal to 1.25 W squared, because our length is the 1.25 W and our width is just W. So we want to multiply those two. When we do, we get 1.25 W squared. We are going to then divide each side of this equation by 1.25. These cancel out, so we're going to be left with W squared is equal to 256. From here, take the square root of both sides. That 256, the square root of it is 16. So this gives you W is equal to plus or minus 16. Now, when you are dealing with dimensions, you are only working with the positive numbers. You don't ever have negative dimensions, or sorry, distances here. So with this, you're only taking the positive of the two numbers. With that, find your length now. Your length is 1.25 times your width. So that's the 16. The 1.25 times 16 is 20. So your length is 20 inches and your width is 16 inches. For 17, it tells us that a circle is graphed with its center on the origin. The area of the circle is 144 square units. What are the x-intercepts of the graph round to the nearest tenth? Now, we haven't gone over this at all yet. However, the area of a circle is pi times radius squared. Your radius is what you're looking for. So if you're given the formula, area is 144, and then your pi radius squared, and you're finding for your radius, the only thing you have to do is divide each side by your pi. So you're going to do radius squared is equal to 144 over pi. Then you take the square root of both sides. You know the square root of 144 is 12. So that's r squared is equal to 12 over the square root of pi. If you multiply top and bottom by the square root of pi, you're going to have your radius is 12 square root pi over pi. Okay, again, I'm not worried about you really knowing how to do this one because we haven't gone through circles or anything else like that yet. So these are just extra practice problems. For 18, it tells you the equation d is equal to 16t squared. That 2 is supposed to mean squared. 16t squared gives the distance d in feet that a golf ball falls in t seconds. How many seconds will it take a golf ball to drop to the ground from a height of 4 feet, then for 64 feet. So this pretty much sets up your equations for you. You're literally just doing 4 is equal to 16t squared and finding for t, and 64 is equal to 16t squared and solving for t. So for this one, the first one, 4 is equal to 16t squared, we're going to divide each side by the 16. We get t squared is equal to 1 over 4. We take the square root of both sides. We get that t is equal to plus or minus 1/2. Now, again, you're dealing with distances here, so you're only taking the positive. So t for this one is 1/2. For the 64 is equal to 16t squared, we're going to divide each side by 16. If you didn't want to simplify this fraction first, you didn't have to. If you do, it's 4. If you choose not to simplify the fraction first, you are going to take the 64 over 16 and take the square root of that, which is going to give you 8 over 4, which is also 2. So t is equal to plus or minus 8 over 4. We're only keeping the positive of this, so t is equal to 2.